The internet is buzzing after shocking footage surfaced of Lil M slapping his father, Ems Harris, in public, leaving fans stunned and questioning what could have triggered such an intense father-son confrontation. Was this a moment of pure rage, or is there something much deeper at play between them? Eyewitnesses reported that things took a sharp turn when Lil M and Ems Harris were seen arguing heatedly inside a luxury car. At first, it seemed like just another father-son disagreement, but within moments, things escalated beyond control. Sources claim voices were raised, accusations flew, and before anyone could react, Lil M's hand struck his father's face, leaving Ems Harris in shock. The entire incident was allegedly captured on camera, and now fans are eagerly hunting for the leaked footage that has everyone talking. What led Lil M to go so far? Did Ems Harris push his son too far, or is there some hidden family issue behind this shocking outburst? Stay tuned as we break down the intense details of this jaw-dropping confrontation. The atmosphere inside the luxury car was thick with tension, almost suffocating. Ems Harris gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white, while Lil M sat beside him, jaw clenched, eyes burning with frustration. What began as a simple conversation, maybe even an attempt to connect, soon shifted, and the air in the car grew heavier with resentment and unresolved anger. "You never listen, man," Lil M muttered, shaking his head. His voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the frustration simmering beneath it. "You always think you know what's best for me, but you don't. You never have." Ems Harris let out a deep sigh, tightening his grip on the wheel. "That's not fair," he responded in a low voice tinged with exhaustion. "I've been trying to do right by you. You think this is easy? Being a father, especially with everything we've been through?" Lil M scoffed and turned to stare out the window. The city lights blurred past, but his mind was far away, lost in memories of times he felt abandoned by his father. He remembered the moments when he needed guidance, but found only absence. He had watched as his father built a life with Yandy and their children, while he had to navigate life on his own. "Don't even start with that," Lil M said, his voice sharpening. "You talk about being a father, but where were you when I needed you? Where were you when I had to figure things out by myself? When I had to be my own man because you weren't there?" Ems Harris took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling as he processed the weight of his son's words. He knew his son had every right to feel the way he did. Ems Harris knew his son had every right to feel the way he did. He was aware of his own mistakes, big ones, but he also believed he had tried to make things right. "I was doing what I had to do," he said, his voice quieter, almost pleading. "I was handling things, making sure you had everything you needed. Maybe I wasn't there as much as I should have been, but don't act like I didn't care." Lil M turned to face him, his brow furrowed, breathing sharply in frustration. "You always say that," he muttered, his voice steady but full of emotion. "But words don't matter when your actions don't match. You expect me to just forget everything and pretend like everything's fine?" Ems Harris ran a hand over his face. "No," he admitted, his voice strained. "I don't expect you to forget, but can we at least try to move forward for once?" There was a brief silence, only the hum of the car engine and the distant sounds of the city filling the space between them. But that silence wasn't peaceful. It was the calm before a storm. Lil M chuckled, but it wasn't with amusement. It was bitter and hollow. "Move forward?" he repeated, shaking his head. "How? How can I do that when you refuse to take responsibility? When you act like I'm supposed to just accept whatever you say?" Ems Harris turned slightly, his patience thinning. "You don't think I've taken responsibility?" he asked, his voice tight with frustration. "You think I haven't tried to fix things?" Lil M stared at him, his eyes dark with deep resentment. "You know what your problem is?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You think that just because you've done better recently, it erases everything from before, but it doesn't. I'm still dealing with all that, even if you're not." Ems Harris clenched his jaw. The conversation, once tense, had now escalated into something explosive. He knew his son was hurt, and he understood why he was angry. But the way Lil M spoke, like all of Ems Harris's efforts, meant nothing, cut deeper than he expected. "You don't get it," Ems Harris muttered, shaking his head. Lil M leaned forward slightly, his eyes burning with frustration. "No," he snapped, his voice rising now. "You don't get it." That was the breaking point. Ems Harris scoffed, rolling his eyes, dismissing his son's pain with a simple gesture. But before he could fully react, Lil M's hand shot out, slapping his father across the face. The sharp crack of the slap echoed inside the car, an explosive sound that shattered whatever restraint remained between them. Ems Harris's head jerked to the side, his cheek burning from the impact. His eyes widened, not from pain, but from shock. Lil M sat back, his chest rising and falling with deep, uneven breaths. His hands were still shaking, and his face was frozen in a mixture of anger and disbelief. He had done it. He had actually done it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of what had just happened hung heavily in the air, like a dark cloud between them. Slowly, Ems Harris turned back toward his son, his jaw tightening. Ems Harris's breathing was steady, but there was a fire burning in his eyes. "What the hell did you just do?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. Lil M swallowed hard, his heart pounding. He had acted purely on impulse and raw emotion, and now, for the first time, he wasn't sure what the next move would be. The silence stretched painfully, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Ems Harris's cheek still burned, but the pain wasn't just physical. It cut deeper, through his pride and his authority as a father. He never expected this kind of thing to come from his own son. Lil M's breathing was erratic, his hands trembling as he tried to process the gravity of what he had just done. He had no idea where that slap had come from. Was it anger? Frustration? Years of pent-up resentment, finally released in an uncontrollable moment? Ems Harris exhaled sharply, his jaw clenching as he turned his entire body toward his son. His eyes were filled with something unrecognizable. Hurt, betrayal, and a darker emotion. "You just put your hands on me," he said, his voice eerily calm. Lil M's chest heaved as he tried to speak, but no words came out. What could he say? "I didn't mean it" would be a lie because, in that moment, he did mean it. Ems Harris let out a bitter chuckle, shaking his head. "That's how you feel? You've got that much hate in your heart for me?" Lil M felt his stomach twist. Was that what his father thought? That this was hate? He didn't hate him, did he? "This isn't about hate," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "This is about you never listening, never understanding where I'm coming from." Ems Harris scoffed, his voice now sharp. "Oh, I understand just fine," he shot back, frustration evident in his words. "I've busted my ass trying to be there for you, and this is what I get?" He gestured toward his still stinging cheek, his face twisted in disbelief. "This is the respect I get?" Lil M's nostrils flared as frustration surged through him again. "Don't act like you're some saint," he snapped. "You talk about being there for me now, but where was all this concern when I really needed it?" Ems Harris slammed his palm against the dashboard, his patience breaking. "You think I had a damn choice?" he yelled, his voice shaking with undeniable frustration. "Like I wanted to be locked up, like I wanted to miss all those years." He took a breath, his voice quieter now. "You think I didn't lay awake at night, thinking about what I missed, thinking about you?" Lil M's throat tightened, but he refused to let his father's words get to him. He wasn't going to let his dad spin this into some guilt trip. "Thinking about me wasn't enough," he said coldly. "Because when you finally came back, you still weren't really here." Ems Harris blinked, his breath hitching for just a moment. That one hit deep. The words hung between them, thick and heavy, the weight of the moment settling in. The car, once filled with heated words, now stood in a tense, suffocating silence. The intense shouting that had filled the air was suddenly replaced by an unsettling silence. Then, without warning, Ems Harris flung open the car door. Lil M's eyes widened as he watched his father step onto the street, fists clenched at his sides. The harsh glow of the streetlights above highlighted the anger and pain on his father's face, making the emotions even more intense. Lil M hesitated for a moment, but eventually opened his own door and stepped out. He wasn't about to back down. Now. "You walking away now?" he called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Real mature. M's Harris whipped around so fast, his expression nearly impossible to read. "You want to act like a grown man?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Then face me like one." Lil M's heart raced. He knew his father wasn't trying to start a physical fight, but the challenge in his words was undeniable. In that instant, they weren't just father and son anymore. They were two men facing each other, years of unspoken, hurt and resentment hanging in the air, threatening to explode once more. The street was eerily quiet, save for the distant sound of passing cars. But in that moment, nothing else mattered, just the tension between them, thick and suffocating. M's Harris took a slow breath, his expression softening ever so slightly. "You don't understand everything," he said, his voice quieter now. "Maybe that's on me, but don't ever think you have the right to put your hands on me." Lil M scoffed, a bitter edge to his words. "Yeah? And what are you going to do about it?" M's Harris's jaw tightened, but this time, he didn't respond. With more anger. Instead, he stepped closer, the air between them crackling with tension. "I don't have to do anything," he said, his voice low but filled with undeniable weight. "You already did it to yourself." Lil M felt a shift in his chest. The words didn't carry the weight of a physical threat, but they hit harder than any slap ever could. M's Harris shook his head and took a small step back. "You want to act grown? Fine. But let me tell you something. Real men don't let their emotions dictate their decisions." The air between them thickened again, filled with unspoken truths and unresolved feelings.